People walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that morning thinking they already knew how the day would go. They expected another routine case, another entitled defendant, another quick ruling delivered with that signature sharpness. But what they didn't expect, what nobody in that room even imagined, was that the girl who stepped forward would try to bend the entire American justice system around her like it was a toy. She didn't introduce herself with her name. She introduced herself with her father's title. "My father is an ambassador," she said. "I'm protected. I don't have to be here." She said it not with fear, but with rehearsed confidence, as though she had practiced this speech in front of a mirror and assumed it would silence the courtroom. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And in that moment, something unusual happened. Judge Judy didn't interrupt her. She didn't fire back. She didn't even lift her eyebrows. Instead, she sat there quietly, almost small in comparison to the towering confidence of the ambassador's daughter. Her face calm, her posture relaxed, her hands folded with almost grandmotherly softness. To the untrained eye, she looked overmatched. Outranked. A judge facing the full diplomatic shield of a foreign government. Even the audience felt it, a subtle tension that whispered, maybe this girl really is untouchable. The ambassador's daughter sensed that hesitation. She leaned into it, weaving a story about privilege, immunity, and how local law cannot override international protections. She smirked as she spoke, fully convinced that she stood above the courtroom, above the judge, above the consequences. Her tone was coated with the assurance of someone who had been protected her entire life, someone used to doors opening, rules bending, and adults surrendering the moment her last name was mentioned. But beneath that quiet exterior, beneath that still posture, something far more dangerous was happening behind Judge Judy's eyes. She wasn't intimidated. She wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She was studying. Listening. Calculating. She let the girl talk, not because she was powerless, but because she wanted the girl to reveal every assumption, every lie, every piece of arrogance that would later be turned against her. It was the stillness of a storm preparing to move. The silence before a courtroom shifts on its axis. What nobody in that room knew, what the ambassador's daughter absolutely did not expect, was that Judge Judy had encountered diplomatic-laced arrogance before. And she had something tucked deep into her mental drawer, something she had never needed to bring out until now. A detail. A clause. A hidden truth buried inside the very protection the girl claimed was unbreakable. A truth so sharp that once revealed, it would slice through every ounce of immunity the girl believed she possessed. But Judge Judy didn't reveal it yet. She waited. She watched. And with every word the girl uttered, every boast, every self-made crown she placed on her own head, Judy's eventual strike grew sharper. Stronger. Inevitable. The room thought Judy looked like the underdog, but only because they had never seen a quiet judge prepare a checkmate. Before we get to the moment where Judge Judy flips the entire courtroom upside down, make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next isn't just shocking, it's the kind of twist that makes this case one of the most unforgettable moments in courtroom history. The tension that settled over the courtroom after the ambassador's daughter announced her immunity wasn't just emotional, it carried the weight of international protocol, political boundaries, and the fragile line between lawful authority and diplomatic privilege. Most people sitting in that room had no idea how delicate the situation actually was. They saw a judge, a young woman, a dispute. But what simmered underneath was something far bigger, something that could easily spiral beyond the walls of that courtroom if mishandled. Diplomatic immunity, when used correctly, protects diplomats from legal harassment, ensuring they can perform their duties without interference. But when misused, when wielded as a personal weapon by someone who barely understands its limits, it becomes dangerous. It becomes a challenge to the very idea of justice itself. And that's exactly what Judge Judy recognized the moment the young woman started leaning on her father's status as though it were a shield carved out of untouchable steel. The daughter didn't simply claim she was immune from this particular dispute. She implied something deeper, that she could operate above American law entirely. That her father's position made her exempt from consequences. That her name alone was enough to silence accountability. It was the kind of claim that doesn't justify courtroom procedure, it threatens to undermine the balance between nations. And if Judge Judy allowed even a fraction of that implication to stand, it would send a dangerous signal well beyond her courtroom. People forget how fragile justice can be when privilege grows too loud. The girl continued ranting about international protections, citing global agreements she clearly didn't understand. Each sentence she delivered was louder than the last, dripping with the exaggerated confidence of someone who had never been forced to defend her own actions. She spoke as if the United States legal system were a guest in her world, not the other way around. And every word added another layer to the stakes building silently around Judge Judy. But the judge still didn't react. She didn't raise her voice, didn't slam her gavel, didn't deliver the sharp retort the audience expected. Instead, she remained quiet, studying the girl with the measured patience of a chess player watching an opponent reveal their entire strategy. Judy let her talk because silence, in the hands of someone who understands the weight of law, is the most powerful tool of all. In that moment, the courtroom didn't realize it, but they were watching a battle of philosophies, one rooted in entitlement, the other in the belief that power must always answer to truth. The ambassador's daughter used her father's position as a sword. Judge Judy used nothing but restraint. And though the room hadn't yet shifted in Judy's favor, the stakes were already tilting toward her. Because here's what no one else knew. This wasn't the first time Judge Judy had seen someone try to weaponize diplomatic language. Years before television fame, before viral clips and national recognition, she had handled cases involving foreign officials' families hiding behind legal loopholes. She understood the difference between real immunity and a teenager's misunderstanding of her father's job. But she also knew that calling out such arrogance too early would only fuel its fire. So she waited. She waited because the stakes demanded patience. If she struck too soon, the daughter would play the martyr, spinning the narrative into a story about a judge disrespecting an ambassador's family. If she struck too late, she risked appearing weak. Judy needed the girl to expose herself fully, to show the court, the cameras, and the online world exactly how little she understood the law she was waving like a trophy. The more the girl rambled, the clearer it became that she believed immunity was a free pass, a magical key that allowed her to walk through any door and break any rule. She described previous incidents where officers let her go once they learned who her father was. She bragged about times she dismissed teachers, store owners, even neighbors by throwing the words "international protection" around like confetti. Every story she told revealed a pattern, a lifetime of boundaries erased by privilege and a belief that accountability was a burden meant only for ordinary people. But the stakes weren't just personal anymore. With every arrogant claim, she was challenging the integrity of the courtroom itself. She was daring Judge Judy to push back, daring the system to prove her wrong. She wasn't just insulting the judge, she was insulting the very idea that justice applies equally to everyone. And yet, Judy stayed silent. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like Judy was losing. The daughter spoke loudly while Judy stayed quiet. The daughter waved her father's authority around while Judy acted like she didn't care. The daughter looked powerful, Judy looked almost passive. But that's because the courtroom didn't see what Judy saw. They didn't see how the girl contradicted herself 3 times. They didn't notice how her timeline shifted. They didn't hear how she misquoted international law and described rules that didn't exist. They didn't catch the subtle cracks in her argument, the inconsistencies in her narrative, the panic buried under her confidence. Judy caught every one of them. And quietly, she started assembling them into a structure, a legal trap so precise that when she finally decided to reveal it, it would collapse the girl's entire claim in a single sentence. But she wasn't ready to unveil it yet. The stakes weren't high enough. The lesson wouldn't land unless the girl built her tower of arrogance as tall as possible. Because when it falls, the world will see exactly why Judge Judy's patience is far more dangerous than her anger. As the daughter continued, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Staff members exchanged glances. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. No one dared speak aloud, but everyone felt it, the sense that they were watching something precarious unfold, something that could become much bigger than a simple dispute. What none of them understood was that Judge Judy was holding the entire balance in her hands. She knew that how she handled this moment wouldn't just determine the outcome of the case, it would shape how the public understood the limits of diplomatic privilege. To allow the girl's claims to stand would be to enable a narrative where foreign power outranks American law. To shut her down too aggressively would feed a narrative of judicial overreach. Judy had to strike precisely. And she would. But only after the girl made one final mistake, one that would raise the stakes to their highest point and open the door for Judy to deliver the blow she'd been crafting from the moment this girl opened her mouth. The real story began long before the ambassador's daughter ever stood in front of Judge Judy. That moment in the courtroom was just the final spark of a fire she had been quietly building for years, a fire made of entitlement, immunity myths, and the belief that rules were optional for people like her. Everyone who had dealt with her before had either backed down, looked away, or let her walk past them untouched. Teachers who tried to discipline her were met with veiled threats. Store owners who confronted her for breaking policies were silenced with the phrase, "My family has protection." Even local officers, unsure of the boundaries of international law, stepped aside rather than risk escalating the situation. With every incident, her confidence grew, not the healthy kind, but the reckless kind born from never facing consequences. She began treating diplomatic immunity like a personal crown, something she inherited the way other kids inherited eye color. Every time someone hesitated, every time someone apologized, every time someone backed down, she learned the same lesson: I'm untouchable. And once a young person absorbs that idea deeply enough, they stop seeing rules, they see obstacles. They stop seeing people, they see threats. And they stop seeing law, they see theater. That mindset was exactly what walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that day. The girl didn't simply argue, she performed. Her words weren't answers, they were declarations. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was dismissive. She spoke as though she were doing the court a favor by even showing up. Even her body language announced the same message over and over: I don't belong in this room. This room belongs beneath me. And at first glance, Judge Judy looked like the wrong opponent for her. Judy appeared calm, collected, almost too still. To the ambassador's daughter, it must have looked like weakness. She mistook Judy's silence for intimidation, her patience for uncertainty, her underdog posture for vulnerability. She had no idea that Judge Judy's strength had never been in her volume, it was in her precision. The dispute itself was simple on the surface, the kind of case that usually took 10 minutes, a property issue involving damage, responsibility, and compensation. Any ordinary citizen would have settled it quickly, accepted their role, paid what they owed, and moved on. But this girl wasn't ordinary. She entered the courtroom convinced she didn't owe anything to anyone, because consequences were for other people, people without embassies behind them, people without foreign titles and their family, people who couldn't end a conversation by dropping their father's job like a mic. So instead of addressing the issue, she built a wall of immunity around herself. Every time Judy asked a question, the girl answered with a story. Every time Judy tried to clarify, the girl replied with a threat disguised as protocol. She spoke of international protections, the way some people speak of seatbelt laws, casually, confidently, incorrectly. But Judge Judy didn't argue with her. She didn't raise her voice, didn't correct her, didn't confront her. She allowed the girl to keep digging. Not because she couldn't stop her, but because she wanted her deep enough in her own arrogance that the truth would hurt when it surfaced. And the girl kept digging. At one point, she bragged about incidents where she walked away from consequences in other countries. She mentioned officers who didn't want trouble with her family. She referenced school officials who stepped back once they learned who her father was. Each example was meant to intimidate Judge Judy, but each one only revealed more about how much she misunderstood the law she was hiding behind. She didn't realize she was giving Judy everything she needed. Not just the inconsistencies. Not just the holes in her story. But the motivation behind every action she'd taken. The fear. The entitlement. The learned behavior. The belief that immunity wasn't a legal concept, but a personal shield against accountability. The courtroom felt the shift before the girl sensed it. The whispers grew quieter. The audience leaned forward. Even the bailiff's posture changed slightly, as though he sensed a current moving through the room, one that hadn't been there before. Judge Judy hadn't spoken much yet, but something in the atmosphere changed, an invisible line drawn not with volume, but with control. Because Judy wasn't reacting. She was preparing. And when the ambassador's daughter finally reached the height of her arrogance, when she declared that no domestic judge can evaluate my case, that was the moment Judy's eyes sharpened just enough for the audience to notice. Not a glare. Not anger. Just focus. A quiet signal that the patience was about to end. The courtroom didn't know it yet, but Judge Judy had been waiting for that exact sentence, the one mistake the girl couldn't erase, the one claim she couldn't walk back. It was the opening Judy needed. The thread she would pull that would unravel everything. The ambassador's daughter thought she had just won the room. She didn't realize she had just opened the door for Judge Judy to take it from her. Judge Judy's questioning didn't begin with force. It began with something far more unsettling for someone like the ambassador's daughter, calm curiosity. When Judy finally leaned toward her microphone, she didn't raise her voice or strike with one of her infamous one-liners. Instead, she asked a simple question. A question so ordinary that the girl didn't even sense the danger buried inside it. Show me the proof of your diplomatic status. The daughter blinked, caught off guard not by the question itself, but by the tone Judy used. It wasn't confrontational. It wasn't fearful. It wasn't impressed. It was measured, steady, and unervingly neutral, the tone of someone who wasn't buying the performance but wasn't ready to unveil her hand either. The girl tried to regain momentum. She launched into another explanation about her father's rank, his duties, his international authority. She spoke of embassies, treaties, and protections, with the confidence of someone who expected every word to land like a hammer. But Judge Judy only waited, her expression unmoving. Nothing the girl said shook her. Nothing intimidated her. Nothing convinced her. Judy's silence wasn't weakness, it was rope. Rope the girl used eagerly, obliviously, and recklessly. When the girl finished, Judy repeated the same request, this time with the quiet firmness of someone who had shifted from listening to analyzing. Proof. Of. Your. Status. Not your father's resume. Not your family's political reach. Not your vague interpretation of international law. Your status. That was the moment the girl's confidence flickered. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But enough for Judge Judy to register it instantly. Because people who are truly immune don't stutter when asked for documentation. They don't search for justification in their father's title. They don't explain. They show. The girl did not show. Instead, she tried another tactic, deflection. She claimed the embassy handled her paperwork and that protocols restricted her from disclosing confidential documents. She layered her excuses with enough complex vocabulary to confuse someone who didn't know better. But Judy knew better. Every word the girl used only reinforced how little she understood about real diplomatic immunity. Judy had spent decades studying legal frameworks and dealing with cases where individuals tried to manipulate the system. She knew exactly how immunity worked. More importantly, she knew how it didn't work. You understand, Judy said softly, that immunity is not inherited like eye color. The girl froze. The courtroom reacted before she did, a ripple of whispers, a shift in posture, a quiet, "oh boy," from somewhere in the back row. It wasn't a dramatic moment on the surface, but it was the beginning of something else entirely. Judy's tone was still composed, but her words carried precise, surgical force. For the first time, the ambassador's daughter realized she wasn't talking to a judge who could be intimidated. She was talking to one who was setting a trap. Judy continued her quiet questioning, each query designed to target a weak point the girl didn't know she had. Judy asked about the specific category of immunity she believed she possessed. No answer. She asked whether her father held a diplomatic posting under the Vienna Convention's Article 31 or Article 37. The girl blinked. She asked if the girl understood the distinction between full immunity and functional immunity. Silence. With every question, the girl's arguments crumbled, revealing not strength, but ignorance wrapped in entitlement. And Judy didn't rush. She let the girl expose herself sentence by sentence, as though she were watching a tower of confidence lose its foundation brick by brick. Judy's method wasn't aggression, it was precision. Every question served a purpose. Every pause widened the divide between what the girl assumed and what the law actually said. The audience leaned in, sensing a shift. The underdog they had underestimated was no longer just listening. She was hunting, with facts, not force. Then Judy delivered the question that cracked the entire case open. Who told you that you were exempt from civil accountability in this country? It was a trap disguised as curiosity. The girl fell straight into it. My father, she answered, too quickly, too proudly. Judy didn't react. But internally, she knew she had won something major. Not the case, not yet, but the narrative. The girl had just confirmed that her entire defense wasn't built on law. It was built on assumption. On privilege. On parental misinformation. And most importantly, she had demonstrated, on record, in front of witnesses, that she did not understand the immunity she was so aggressively invoking. Judge Judy finally leaned back, her eyes narrowing just enough to signal a shift that everyone felt. It was the moment the underdog stopped playing small and started preparing to strike. Yet she still didn't reveal what she knew. Not yet. She wanted the girl to keep talking. To keep boasting. To keep relying on her father's title instead of actual law. Because Judy hadn't even brought out the real truth, the truth she had tucked away in her mind long before the girl walked in. The truth that would expose everything the girl believed. The truth the girl wasn't prepared for. The courtroom didn't know it yet, but Judy had already found the crack. And soon, she would split it wide open. Judge Judy had listened long enough. The ambassador's daughter had dragged her immunity story through every corner of the courtroom, layering arrogance over ignorance until even she seemed tangled in her own claims. But Judy knew something the girl did not, something she had been saving for the precise moment when the lesson would land hardest. When Judy finally leaned forward, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Controlled. A shift so subtle the girl almost missed it. But the courtroom didn't. The audience straightened, the tension tightening like a pull on a thread. Everyone sensed it, Judge Judy was finally ready to speak. You've mentioned your father's title, Judy began calmly, but not the law that protects you. The girl opened her mouth, ready to repeat her memorized speech, but Judy raised a gentle hand, not loud, not aggressive, just enough to silence her. Let me help you, she said, her voice soft but razor-sharp. Diplomatic immunity falls under the Vienna Convention. I'm sure you've heard of it. The girl nodded confidently, unaware she had just stepped onto thin ice. Judy continued, her tone still deceptively warm. Good. Then you must also know Article 37, correct? Silence. For the first time, the girl's confidence fractured visibly. Judge Judy didn't tease her. She didn't scold her. She simply reached for a slim printed document, one she had kept tucked under her notes since the start of the hearing. It wasn't dramatic like an envelope, but the effect was the same. Judge Judy held up the document and read the exact clause with slow, deliberate clarity. Dependents of diplomatic agents have immunity only to the extent necessary to perform official functions. This includes criminal protection, not civil misconduct. The daughter froze. Judy continued reading. A claim involving property damage, personal disputes, or financial responsibility is not covered by diplomatic immunity. That sentence hit the courtroom like a shockwave. The ambassador's daughter's entire defense, every boast, every threat, every declaration, collapsed in a single breath. Her hands tightened. Her jaw dropped. Her voice disappeared. And Judge Judy wasn't finished. "You are not a diplomat," she said quietly. "You do not hold a position. You do not have functional immunity. And in this courtroom, young lady, your father's title is not a shield." The girl's arrogance shattered into stunned silence. Judy leaned back, composed as ever, the underdog who had just delivered the legal equivalent of a knockout punch, without ever raising her tone. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Even the camera operators exchanged glances. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a moment that would circulate online for years. Judge Judy had waited, listened, analyzed, and struck at the perfect time. And the strike was absolute. If you're still here, hit the like button, because what Judge Judy does next changes the tone of the entire courtroom. The moment Judge Judy finished reading the clause from the Vienna Convention, the courtroom didn't simply shift, it transformed. It was as if the air itself thickened with the realization that everything the ambassador's daughter had relied on, every ounce of status she had waved like a royal banner, had evaporated in front of millions of eyes. What she thought was an unbreakable shield had crumbled in seconds, not with aggression, but with the quiet force of a judge who knew the law better than any diplomat's child ever could. The daughter's face said everything her arrogance could no longer cover. The flush of embarrassment crept in first, followed by disbelief, then the slow dawning horror that she had walked straight into her own undoing. She wasn't protected. She wasn't immune. She wasn't untouchable. In a single moment, Judge Judy had pulled the illusion of invincibility straight out from under her. But the courtroom was only the beginning. Within minutes of the clip airing, phones buzzed across the building. Staffers texted colleagues. Journalists dashed off notes. Even the stenographer paused, sensing that what she was documenting wasn't merely a ruling, it was a moment destined for headlines. And as the hearing ended, no one moved quickly. People lingered. They whispered. They replayed the moment in their minds, fully aware they had watched something rare, entitlement meeting a force it couldn't silence. The clip hit social media like a lightning strike. Platforms exploded before the daughter even left the courthouse parking lot. One short snippet, Judy lifting the document, reading the clause that stripped away the girl's defense, became the centerpiece of millions of views within hours. The comment sections lit up with reactions that blended shock, admiration, and unfiltered satisfaction. Users posted, "Judge Judy just gave a masterclass in shutting down privilege. This is the moment every teacher, officer, and neighbor wished they had." She thought she was above the law, Judy reminded her no one is. And just like that, the ambassador's daughter, who once believed her father's status could shield her from consequences, became a global example of what happens when arrogance collapses in real time. News outlets wasted no time. Headlines erupted across major publications. Judge Judy exposes diplomatic immunity myth in viral courtroom moment. Ambassador's daughter silenced after claiming international protection. The case that proves consequences still matter. Political commentators joined in, some praising Judy's composure, others using the clip to explain how diplomatic rules are misunderstood and abused. Legal experts broke down Article 37 in televised segments, highlighting how rare it was to see such a clean, public correction of diplomatic entitlement. Even former diplomats chimed in, remarking that Judy's explanation was more accurate and precise than half the briefings they'd attended during their postings. One retired ambassador wrote online, "I wish every diplomat's child could watch that clip. Privilege is not a passport to misbehavior. The ambassador's family, blindsided by the global backlash, issued a statement urging the public to avoid misinterpretations, but the damage was irreversible. The narrative wasn't theirs to control anymore. It belonged to the millions of people who watched Judge Judy do what no one else had, call out misuse of power and dismantle it with a single legal truth. Meanwhile, Judge Judy carried on as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. She didn't gloat. She didn't dramatize. She moved to the next case with the same calm resilience that defined her courtroom career. But the world saw her differently now. She wasn't just a judge. She became the quiet force who proved that law, when understood and upheld correctly, doesn't bend, not even for ambassadors' daughters. And outside the courthouse, as the ambassador's daughter slipped into her car without her usual confidence, she understood something she had never learned before. Immunity doesn't make you powerful. Accountability does. When the dust settled and the courtroom emptied, the weight of what had happened lingered long after the ambassador's daughter walked out. It wasn't just about a ruling, a legal correction, or a clarification of diplomatic boundaries. It was about something deeper, something that reached beyond one courtroom and into the heart of what justice is supposed to mean. Judge Judy had done something subtle but powerful. She reminded everyone watching that the law does not kneel before titles, and truth does not shrink in the presence of privilege. For the ambassador's daughter, the silence after the verdict was louder than any reprimand. She had spent her life believing status guarantees safety, that rank erases responsibility, that a parent's title could substitute for character. But that illusion shattered the moment Judge Judy read that clause. It wasn't a public humiliation, it was a revelation. And for the first time, she felt the full weight of her own actions without the cushion of diplomatic shelter. Yet something else happened too, something only Judge Judy truly understood. In dismantling the girl's argument with calm precision, she had done more than correct a misunderstanding. She had held a mirror to a generation that often confuses privilege with power. She showed that strength is not measured in who your parents are or what titles surround your name, but in your willingness to stand accountable for the consequences you create. The girl didn't lose a case. She gained a lesson, a hard one, but perhaps the first real one in her life. And beyond the personal transformation, the courtroom moment ignited conversations across the world. Families debated it at dinner tables. Teachers showed the clip in civics classes. Legal experts dissected it in podcasts. International viewers were stunned to see a judge confront diplomatic entitlement so calmly and decisively. It became a universal story, a reminder that the boundaries of power are not meant to be exploited, but respected. As for Judge Judy, she didn't bask in the attention that followed. She simply closed her notebook, adjusted her glasses, and carried on. Because for her, this wasn't a viral moment, it was her duty. A duty she had spent her entire life practicing, refining, and defending. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, nor the most privileged. She didn't have diplomatic titles or international status. But she had something far more powerful: knowledge, integrity, and the courage to use both when it mattered most. And that's why people love her. Not because she wins battles, but because she chooses the right ones. It's a story that stays with you. A moment that reminds us all that justice isn't fragile, no matter how loud entitlement may be. And when the right person is sitting on the bench, no shield, diplomatic or otherwise, is strong enough to stop the truth. If you enjoyed this story of truth defeating privilege, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. More unbelievable courtroom showdowns are coming, and you won't want to miss a single one.